With its breathtaking landscapes, fascinating history, and rich cultural lore, this little village and its surrounding mountains have enchanted visitors for generations. It's even said that world-famous author JRR Tolkien spent holidays here as a boy and was so taken by the magic of the place that it inspired him to write The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings fantasy epics. But is this even true? The answer isn't what you'd expect. How's it? I'm Dr. Jacob Seynert. This is Stashy, and you're watching The Historian Stash. Join us as we embark on an unexpected journey of our own to one of South Africa's most mysterious and magical places, Hogsback. Now, the lekker thing about living in the Eastern Cape is that you get to explore all these hidden little gems of South African history. Some are here in your backyard, and Hogsback is one of them. Nestled in the Amatole Mountains, Hogsback Village is only a 2-hour scenic drive from East London, so it's perfect for a weekend getaway from the city or even just a day trip. From a historical point of view, Hogsback is full of little golden nuggets, and here are only a few. First, let's talk about the name, Hogsback. Why? Well, the name Hogsback was first referred to by the painter Thomas Baines while travelling the interior in 1848. Some think it was named after Captain Hogg, commander of Fort Michael near Hunterstoun. Then there are some who suggest that the name might have been inspired by the resident wild boars that roamed these forests. And then there's also the theory that British settlers named the mountains after their nostalgic memories of the Hogsback Ridge in Surrey, England. But the more popular origin story is that it was named after the mountains towering above the village, which resembles the bristled back of a wild hog. The amaXhosa people of the Chumi Valley called the mountain the lekker because when seen from the Mnyameni Valley, the mountain resembles a woman with a child on her back. Whatever the origin, the name Hogsback has become synonymous with natural beauty and mystique. Now, Hogsback isn't just about stunning views, it's also steeped in rich cultural significance. For centuries, this area has been sacred to the amaXhosa people. They believe the Amatole Mountains, where Hogsback lies, are home to ancestral spirits. Local legends speak of mysterious beings and magical creatures that protect the forests. One of these legends tells of a giant serpent called the Inkanyamba that lives beneath one of the mountains. Now, Inkanyamba is known as the snake in the sky, a huge winged monster believed by many amaXhosa locals to be extremely dangerous and needs to be treated with respect. Yeah, a giant flying snake that lives beneath the mountain. Of course you're gonna treat it with respect. I mean, come on, look at this thing. Even these artistic impressions are scary. If you've watched Anaconda, you'll know not to diss this thing. Lessons were learnt, my bro. Even if you haven't watched Anaconda. Now wait, that's impossible to have not watched Anaconda. ETV screens it like 375 times a year. There's no way that you're not going to watch Anaconda or have not watched Anaconda. You're not going to diss this thing. There's no way that you're going to disrespect this Inkanyamba. Anyways, Inkanyamba actually translates as tornado or hurricane in isiXhosa. But it doesn't just refer to a tornado as a weather phenomenon as we understand it. The amaXhosa believe that the word Inkanyamba embodies the spirit of the tornado, often taking on the form of a snake. There have been many tornadoes that have torn through the area over the years. The most notable of these occurred on the 15th of December 1998. The tornado ripped through Hogsback village, damaging buildings and even killing several people. Some amaXhosa in the area believed that this was Inkanyamba on a rampage. On a side note, the same storm system which produced the Hogsback tornado moved on to Mthatha, where then President Nelson Mandela was visiting that day. Fortunately, Madiba narrowly escaped. So Madiba almost starred in the Eastern Cape version of Gone with the Wind. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's said that JRR Tolkien, author of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, drew inspiration for Middle-earth from his childhood visits to the Eastern Cape, including places like Hogsback. While it's true that Tolkien was born in Bloemfontein in 1892, which is quite a cool fact already. Lekker Vrystaat! He left South Africa following his father's death when he was only 3 years old. A shame, man. The family left for England and Tolkien never returned. So even if his family did come down to Hogsback for holidays, it's highly unlikely that Tolkien the toddler would have remembered his visit vividly enough for it to serve as inspiration 30 years later for two sizable bodies of literature. Yeah, I'm not so sure. But there are some that claim that Tolkien's nanny came from the Hogsback area. It's said that she regaled little Tolkien with tales of her home, including the legend of the Inkanyamba. Now, whether this story inspired Tolkien's Smaug the dragon, who also resided beneath a mountain, is uncertain. But I must admit, the myth certainly shares many similarities with the story. Whether or not the greatest fantasy writer of all time visited the place, Hogsback most certainly does have a magical feel to it. And it's not just the mushrooms, my bro. From the numerous waterfalls to the mystical forests, Hogsback feels like it's straight out of a fantasy novel. Now, the Eastern Cape is the site of one of the greatest military sagas in South Africa, where Dutch, British and Boer forces and amaXhosa warriors tenaciously fought each other in 9 wars over a period of 100 years. Hogsback was mainly unaffected by the fighting, but 3 wars did take place close by. Fort Michael was built near Ncika's Kop as the end of a chain of forts along the Eastern Cape frontier from Fort Beaufort and Fort Hare to Fort Michael. The fort and Michael's pass to Seymour was named after Colonel Michael, who was in charge of the troops in Fort Beaufort. In 1834 to 1835, the Great Trek took place, and Piet Retief, who lived close by at Post Retief, led one of the parties. In 1846 to 1847, the 7th War broke out with Colonel Henry Somerset leading his British Redcoats against the Xhosa under Sandile. After the war, Somerset declared the British Kaffraria to be between the Keiskamma and Kai rivers and settled military villages in the Chumi Valley in 1848. In the 8th War of 1850 to 1853, Makoma, a brilliant strategist, led the amaXhosa. This war was the closest to Hogsback. A British military column was attacked along the Buma Pass near Keiskamma Hook in December 1850. This was a valuable victory for the Xhosa. Then, on Christmas Day, the military villages of Auckland, Woburn and Juanasburg in the valley were also attacked. All the men were reportedly killed, but the women and children, as was Xhosa custom, were spared and escaped to Fort White. At the end of the 8th War, George Cathcart, governor of the Cape Colony, opened up the districts of Victoria East, Cathcart and Queenstown for white occupation. Now, to get to these areas, farmers had to trek over the mountains, and Hogsback was considered to be the ideal mountain to trek over. But the journey was still long and arduous, so it was inevitable that a few farmers got moeg halfway through and then decided to settle on top of the mountain. By the mid-1800s, white settlers started to arrive and settle, drawn by the area's cool climate and fertile land. It became a retreat for those seeking tranquility, and its lush surroundings reminded the British settlers of the English countryside, darling. One of Hogsback's oldest and most iconic landmarks is the historic Hogsback Inn. But in 1883, it started as a simple trading post and evolved into a beloved retreat for travelers. Over the years, it's welcomed adventurers, artists and dreamers alike, offering them a cozy place to unwind after exploring the mountains. The inn's charm lies in its old world architecture, roaring fireplaces, and of course, its stories. Locals and visitors alike will tell you it's a place where history comes alive. But the historic Hogsback Inn is only the beginning. There are a few more treasures in and around Hogsback. First, there's the Hogsback Arboretum, home to exotic and indigenous trees, tranquil walking paths, and the famous 39 Steps waterfall. Established back in 1884, the Arboretum is not even the oldest garden in Hogsback. It's a living tree museum with the largest Californian redwoods in South Africa, and some of these trees are over 140 years old. These redwoods were introduced as part of a campaign to reforest the area following mass pillaging and destruction of the indigenous forests in the area. Filled with trees from all over the world, including Monterey pines from America, wattles from Australia, English oaks and Japanese cedars, it's a unique public garden, perfect for a peaceful stroll. There are multiple trails to take, each one with its own enchanting character. At one point, we were walking over a bridge near the 39 Steps waterfall, and we were waiting for a river troll to emerge from under the bridge and chase us and stuff. Needless to say, the imagination can run wild in such a place. Speaking of gardens, the Hogsback Garden Club, or the HGC, is apparently the oldest club in Hogsback in continuous existence after it was established in the mid-20th century. It's contributed enormously to putting Hogsback on the map, with several notable visitors over the years. The HGC organizes tours to gardens in different parts of the Eastern Cape and regularly maintains the beauty of Hogsback by clearing and planting along the dusty roads and footpaths. And then there's the Edge, a dramatic cliffside viewpoint that offers sweeping vistas of the Chumi Valley. You can see the road snaking up the mountain below you, as well as the various villages that dot the picturesque valley floor. On a clear day, the view stretches to the town of Alice, which is renamed Dikeni, and to the rolling hills beyond. A short walk from the Edge is the Labyrinth. Completed in 2002, it's an 11-circuit labyrinth, similar in design to the labyrinth in the Chartres Cathedral in France. It's one of the most intricate labyrinth designs and has a diameter of 29 meters and a circumference of 91 meters. The length of the pathway is 700 meters, and the total distance of the walk to the center and out is 1.4 kilometers, making it one of the largest labyrinths in the world. Now, I don't know what that means, but that sounds pretty cool. Lastly, there's the Hunterstoun Lodge. In 1910, David Hunter, a missionary at Lovedale near Alice, bought a tract of land which he called Hunterstoun. He had a daughter, Monica, who would grow up to become Monica Wilson, the most prominent anthropologist in South Africa, whose groundbreaking research in African communities continued to influence anthropological and ethnographic studies. She lectured at the University of Fort Hare in Alice before taking up a post first at Rhodes University in Grahamstown and then finally the University of Cape Town. She retired in 1973 and decided to settle permanently in Hogsback on Hunterstoun. But retirement didn't sit well with this old battle axe, and she continued to publish for almost 10 years until her death in 1982. Hunterstoun has seen other prominent South African academics pass through over the years. John Dover Wilson, one of the best known Shakespearean scholars and Monica Wilson's father-in-law, edited his book on sonnets in 1962 while staying there. It's also claimed that Z.K. Matthews, famed academic and ANC stalwart, came to Hunterstoun in the early 1950s and sat under a massive tree outside the house, drawing up drafts to nothing less than the Freedom Charter. The Freedom Charter would eventually be adopted in 1955 at the Congress of the People and became the first document enshrining the core principle that all people of South Africa should govern. Now, when I visited Hunterstoun a couple of years ago, I was told the story of Z.K. Matthews casually writing the Freedom Charter under a big tree by one of the caretakers. But I couldn't find any further evidence of this happening in any texts or the interwebs. So if you know anything about it, please drop a comment below and let me know. Is this true or is it twaddle? Today, the Hunterstoun Manor House belongs to the University of Fort Hare and is used as a research space, conference center and getaway spot for stressed out lecturers. Can imagine they've got quite a lot of guests living there then. Hogsback is a place where history, culture and nature intertwine to create something truly magical. Whether you're drawn by its legends, its landmarks or its serene beauty, there's no denying its charm. If you're coming to Hogsback with the hopes of spotting a hobbit or a troll or a fairy, you might be disappointed, but you also might not. That's what's so enchanting about this place. The feeling of magic is everywhere, and I promise you, I'm not saying this because I ate the local mushrooms, because I didn't, for reals. So the next time you're craving an escape into the past and the wonders of nature, consider visiting Hogsback. Who knows, you might just find a little magic of your own. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Hogsback's history. Don't forget to gooi a like, comment and subscribe to the Historian Stash for more stories of South Africa's incredible heritage. Until next time, stay stashy.